Hi, I'm Robin Boyce for City Corner. Come on back because we've got some extraordinary people in Missouri to talk about. Hi, I'm Robin Boyce for City Corner. Thank you for joining us today. We're still Zooming it and it's going really well. I hope you're okay out there. It is cold weather and that you're mitigating properly during this pandemic. Today, we're going to be talking about a little history here in St. Louis, Missouri. And with me, that's coming in on our Zoom instead of here in the studios, as I'm usually saying, is Mr. John A. Wright Sr. and Mr. John A. Wright Jr. They both are historians, along with their wife, Sylvia Wright. Also, there is a book that they have written that's being going into it, a second edition, and it's called An Extraordinary Black Missourians. And this is the second edition of this book about 100 historical figures here in the Missouri area. Now, Mr. Wright has been writing books for many years, and now he's making it a family affair. How are you all doing? It's nice to see the John Wrights.
Doing
We're doing
well.
fine.
Both a handsome pair. It's always great to see you, Mr. Wright. You are just the ever since I was a young reporter, I've always enjoyed covering events where you would speak or you were doing a presentation of some kind or another. And I want to thank you and thank you both for continuing to conserve the rich history that we have here in St. Louis area and in St. Louis, Missouri. Thank you so much. I really enjoy what you have there. And I'm sure a lot of people have called on you to get research and background information on some of the things you've done.
We
I
get a
want to
few
thank you
calls.
so much for that. Yes. So you are a Fulbright a scholar, an educator, historian, and an author. And while you've written almost over a dozen books on Black history here in the St. Louis area, why did you do that, Mr. Wright?
Well, my background is a teacher.
Yeah.
First, I'm an educator first. Seeing material coming to the schools without black folks in it,
Oh.
it became a problem. It's just like you're invited to a picnic and people bring out the albums and they wonder why so and so's not excited about seeing our pictures.
Okay.
Not excited because our family's not in it.
Right.
And so if we want kids to feel good about themselves, you got to teach them about themselves. And we don't want those who are not African American to have a distorted image and history of our country. So it makes everyone feel good to see an inclusive history, and we're all better off for it.
John Wright Jr., the same thing. Now, you grew up seeing this man pull things together. Was that the same kind of conversation or environment you felt too as you were pulling together and making the decision to get into writing history with your dad?
Initially he would kind of sneak it in.
Okay.
There's a series called Golden Legacy Comics. And when we were getting comic books on superheroes, he'd slide those in and say, check this out. And there would be Black History comic books that would be in on Toussaint Louverture, Alexander Dumas.
I remember
Uh,
those.
and so, it would became uh, not so much a book kind of thing, but a story kind of thing where we just were learning more about ourselves. And then we would get curious and he would kind of point to books on the bookshelf in his office. I remember there's a book called The Dark Companion.
Ooh.
And it was the story of Matthew Henson. And then he would,
Yes.
would tell us about those things. And it's just not just that there were people that went to the North Pole, but a Black man was the first to go to the North Pole with Admiral Perry and two
Exactly.
Eskimos. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. See that those are the kind of things that really pique people's interest and in their history. I've always been the same way. My dad was the same way too. He was huge on us really understanding our background, who we were. He was the second to the last child of 16 siblings. Okay. And and they all are highly successful people. They migrated here to the St. Louis area, and right now, that family, I've got like 500 cousins. Okay, and so we are right now on a national level trying to pull together a book of pretty much like what you and your dad have done on that family. And it's just really interesting some of the things we're finding out, and as we go along. And personally, for me, I've always been a history buff, and I've always loved history, and I've always liked learning more about who I am, what I am, and then what it is that I can pass on to young people. Mr. Wright Sr., how long have you been writing these books? How long have you been pulling this kind of history together?
Oh, let's see. I started right when I did my dissertation.
Okay.
That goes back to I finished in 1978. And so when I did it on the desegregation of the African schools in St. Louis County,
Yes.
I had to meet a lot of people and go to different homes and different communities. So you begin pulling things together at that point. So from there, I began to develop material to put in the book form. So it
Okay.
goes
So
back to 78.
that really made a difference for you. Really like your story on the fact that you really thought it was important, because you not only have been an educator for many years now, you were also served as a principal. You've been an interim superintendent for St. Louis Public School System, and you are the past president for the trustees for St. Louis Community College School District. And I imagine in those roles, you saw what you talked about earlier, folks not really knowing themselves. And if they knew who they were, that would make a difference in those kind of environments.
Right. I think when you feel good about yourself, it's also good for people. When you feel good about yourself, you feel good about others. If you like yourself, you can like others. If you don't like yourself, it's hard for you to like others.
Yeah, it is. It's really hard for you not to really understand who you are, what you're about, if you don't know. It surprised me. You're talking about children. I'm writing some pieces right now, putting some small things together for a smaller publication. And it amazes me the adults who do not know their history here in St. Louis, Missouri. Just some figures that I've just written about recently in the last year for Black History Month. Adults don't know who these folks are. And that to me, and I'm talking about people in their late 60s and their 70s. They don't know who they are. And they didn't know who these people were. But I knew who these folks were. I knew that they were historical individuals here in the St. Louis area. And they made a big difference. But these people didn't know. That frightens me a little bit. I don't know about you all.
Well, I tell you, many people grow up with misconceptions.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, they get embarrassed. I've been traveling, and Americans have an attitude,
Yeah.
and I've seen us being put in our place
Yeah.
when we don't know our history and others do. And so it's just good to have the history behind you and
And
find
I
good
guess it's
foundation.
exactly. And I guess it's shepherds like myself and you all that have to continue to discuss and talk about who those individuals are. Now, we're talking about your book that came out, I guess, in 2013, but you're doing a second edition of it. You got a new cover to it and everything. And y'all written so many books. I think it's wonderful. There was one figure in this book, Cathay Williams. Did I pronounce her first name correct?
Kathy Williams.
Kathy is just Kathy Williams. Tell us about who Kathy Williams was.
She's the first, only known Buffalo soldier. Her name was, she went in as William Kathy. That's how she signed up.
She went in William Kathy.
Kathy Williams, William Kathy, yes. And she signed up at Jefferson Barracks.
Wow.
And
Really?
when she left the service, she applied for a pension, but they wouldn't give it to her. But
So
she served as a male Buffalo soldier.
can you imagine what that was like? You could actually do a movie on this lady. You
Yeah,
know, you could actually put together a really good story or children's book about this woman and what she's done. And to see that kind of a figure painted into, say, storytelling or a nice little video that's done. Have you all thought about doing that, John Jr.? Have you all thought about doing little movies or vignettes? Put some more on your
Well,
plate, I know.
there are a few people that I think would make really, really good, interesting stories or good movies, both short and long, that are just fascinating that I know people don't know about. I know Francis McIntosh's story. When you look at a movie like Queen and Slim, about two people that are out on a date and their life is changed when they kill a police officer.
Right.
And in real life, that's what happened with Francis. This is a man who is going out. His only intent was to have a date. He's dressed up to go on a date. He's got a young lady that he wants to go out with. And these police officers stop him thinking that he should help in the arrest of two white men. Now, at that time, police officers did not wear uniforms. They only had the badges. And at a distance, they're yelling at Francis to stop two criminals. And then they blame him for the criminals getting away.
Right.
So
Right.
they're going to take him to jail. They promised, they said that they were going to give him 5 years for aiding and abetting criminals. And he panics. He stabs one officer, kills another, and then finds himself going to jail, then burned alive within hours.
Oh, yes. Oh.
And to, just to know that his life had changed so much in the space of a day.
Yeah.
And being, an innocent bystander and having this happen to him, it's fascinating.
It is fascinating. It
But,
is fascinating. Mhm.
people don't know that happened right here, on Chestnut
Missouri.
Street in St. Louis.
Wow. We're going to come back. I've got so many more questions. We're going to spend more time on the figures that you talk about in this book. And so warm up. We've got some more information, because what I have found what's really interesting is some of the figures that you're talking about in the book really collide with what's going on with today, right now, right here in St. Louis, Missouri. We'll be right back.
What I love about St. Louis is the 79 unique neighborhoods nestled into 108 city parks, including Forest Park, which is actually larger than Central Park in New York, and of course, the beautiful Tower Grove Park where I'm at now. Oh, the St. Louis Blues. We've got the St. Louis Surge, two-time WBCBL champions. We've got Harris Stowe, WashU, St. Louis University, and of course, the 11-time World Series champion, St. Louis Cardinals. So come experience St. Louis.
This is the story of a boy who didn't talk for a long time. The boy liked things to always be the same. Any changes would scare and upset him. The unknown was an unfriendly place. The boy was very sensitive to lights and sounds. So he built secret hiding places where they couldn't get in. The boy didn't like looking people in the eye. He wasn't trying to be mean, it just made him feel uncomfortable. Sometimes he would flap his arms again and again.
One day, I found out I have something called autism. My family got me help. Slowly, I found my voice and learned all the ways I could live with it better.
Early intervention can make a lifetime of difference. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org.
Operation Wonder Park is a go!
There's nothing more powerful than imagination. But don't just imagine. Use STEM to change the world.
Who's with me?
Oh, it's gonna hurt tomorrow.
If she can STEM, so can you. Find out more at She Can STEM.
And I'm back here on City Corner. I'm Robin Boyce, and I'm talking right now with the John Wrights, Mr. John Wright Sr. and Mr. John Wright Jr., who are extraordinary authors and historians who have put together a wonderful book called Extraordinary Missourians in this area. I really do appreciate, again, I can't tell you enough how much I really do appreciate you all putting this history together and then continuing it going. Moses Dixon, tell us about Moses Dixon.
John, I'll let you talk this time.
Well, Moses Dixon had the idea that he wasn't going to wait for his freedom. He had organized a bunch of Black men together throughout the South, and they were going to have their own insurrection. The only thing that stopped Moses was the Civil War. He figured rather than them doing their own thing, they would work with the Union for the same goal.
Okay, so Moses Dixon was sort of like, he was the person who fought for civil rights and an end to violence toward African Americans, much like what had happened in Ferguson and what we've been dealing with the Black Lives Matter movement. Is it pretty much a parallel there with that figure and what he did in the past?
I think slight, but the difference is that Moses was covert. The Knights of Liberty was an underground organization. They had to be. There was a great deal of risk that was undertaken. And the penalty was going to be death.
Wow.
So I think that's a significant difference from what was going on in Ferguson.
James Milton Turner, he was a fighter for education. Please tell us about him.
James Milton Turner was born a slave, and he was thrown in when his mother went up for sale. Now, it's interesting. He was purchased with help from whites who said her arm was bad shape. So it wasn't in bad shape. The owner thought it was in bad shape. So she was sold at a reduced price. James was thrown in the sale for $50.
Wow. Oh.
He ended up during the Civil War. He worked as a bootsman at Camp Jackson. But after the war was over, he ended up being Minister of Education, Vice Commissioner of Education for the state of Missouri for Black schools. And he got that position because the gentleman he worked for at Camp Jackson, he thought he was dead, but he was captured. He brought money home to his wife. Later, they found out the man was alive. The good friend of the state of Missouri's governor, the governor ended up taking care of Milton Turner, appointing him over Black schools in the state. He ended up being minister for Liberia. And so then he went to Oklahoma to help settle land disputes between the African Americans and the Native Americans.
Now, is this what Turner School is named after? This Turner?
Turner School was named after him, right? Okay. No, depends on which Turner. Now, we got several Turners.
You've got several Turners. Okay, this one, yeah.
Huh?
Yeah,
that's Turner Middle's named after the entomologist.
Oh, yes. In the Ville, we could go on and on about that community and the stories of the book that you wrote over there. How long ago did African Americans come to the state of Missouri?
Oh, we don't know. We don't know. There are some historians say the mounds were similar to those in Africa, and they found diggings. They found a pipe with an African face on it. Cool. And so doing these mounds, so a professor said there may be some connection between the mounds that we find all the way down to the south being, I guess you'd say, replicated from those found in Africa.
Really? So there, oh, okay. So some of the mounds that we have found around here in the area where people and artifacts have been
So we
buried.
don't know.
We don't know at
We
this
don't
point.
know.
We don't know, but it was a long time, probably before and after the Civil War. Um, how
Oh
important
yeah,
is it?
because I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
because
No, go
there's
ahead.
the earliest slaves were that were brought here. Black men brought in slavery was in the early 1600s to work the lead mines near St. Genevieve.
Right. So slaves have been here, we know for sure, since the early 16, you said 1600s?
Early 1600s. They came up with the French uh,
Right.
shortly after the first slave ships arrived on the shores of Virginia.
Okay. All right. All right. So black people have been in the state of Missouri for from the beginning. What 1619? We go all the way back.
Not that,
How,
not
right.
Missouri, but yeah.
How important is it for us to chronicle our history? How important is it?
Very important, because we learn something every day. We're learning more and more information. Uh, and I think we need to know how we got here in the in Americas. There's a book by Ivan Van Sertima called, his title is They Came Before Columbus, where ships, they got in the ocean, the current like a conveyor belt, brought from Africa all the way over to the Caribbean. And so when Columbus came, he found Indians talking about Africans being there. And so that's important to know, for people to know that. Excuse me. It's
That's fine.
um, he when the Balboa discovered the Pacific Ocean, they found Africans fighting with the natives in there.
Okay.
So we've been here a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, a very long time. And so it's good to know that.
It's good to know that, and good to know your history, and good for people to grab onto that so that they can move forward. Does knowing your history help you understand and or help us understand and decipher what's going on right now in society?
Oh, yes. Yes.
You know, understanding the history of why some people may do some things and why other people may do other things. I mean,
Cause and effect.
right, we are
Cause and
not from a
effect.
monolithic society, so there are reasons why things are like they are, and knowing that history can help us understand why things are like they are, John Jr.
Yes, it's like I said, it's a cause and effect relationship. We got here as a result of something else that happened beforehand. And the only way to know that is to know our history. How did we get here? You trace it back, and you trace it back by going through the history, knowing about people that were left out, people that were included. I think that when we talk about history, and we not only was there an exclusion of the contributions of African Americans, but there was a whitewashing of what the history of white Americans and their role in how we got to where we are. They've left a lot of their history out as well.
Yes, a lot of history out. And for most recently did an article for a publication that I work on for St. Louis Lambert Airport, and it was a history on the airport. They celebrated this past year, and a lot of people didn't know that Lambert got its start with the Kinloch flying field, and people were like shocked. They're like, really? And that's one of the reasons I went and picked up that book. And I mean, people went crazy. And it was for Mr. Wright's book. And I said, I remember this man. He really put out some really great historical information. But that book had all kinds of pictures of families from Kinloch, who they were, the first superintendent, the postmaster, wonderful information like that, that people just didn't know that that airport was connected with Kinloch, Missouri.
Or that Robertson was sacrificed to build a new airport.
Right, right, exactly. It was an interesting it's an interesting background and a story that people just didn't know about. That when I continued to do research on it, and the architects at the airport put together the map of the present day airport, and they showed Kinloch Field, and then I didn't realize that there was also a racetrack out there.
Racetrack, yes.
I mean, we had a lot of things going on in Kinloch back in the day.
Yeah, then Berkeley took that part of Kinloch. Berkeley was Kinloch at first,
Got you.
and most
Got you.
people don't realize that.
Yes, that whole thin line of history right there, and why that happened. Because at that time, African Americans weren't living there, but they were coming into the area. Was that correct?
Right, they moved in. They were making more money selling lots to black folks than white folks. We had
Okay.
enough people we could vote, and so we began to take control of the school board.
Gotcha.
And then when looked like we were going to have control, whites wanted to say, well, can we have a separate school system? The state said no. The county said you can't do that. So they incorporated into a town. They named it Berkeley. The first item on the agenda was to have a school system, a white school system.
Okay. Okay. So there's some history right there. I mean, Kinloch, one of the oldest cities in the state of Missouri, or
Missouri's first black city.
Missouri's first black city. And that's a lot of history right there that adult people, Mr. Wright, didn't even know. They seriously did not know that information. As you continue to go, you've got some more history you're going to be putting together. We got more books coming from you all, because I can think of all kinds of titles, some personal stuff I'm working on right now, as a matter of fact. I mean, there's so much to do on Black journalists, on Black female politicians, on that. I mean, it's shocking to me that when I go to look up a Black politician from the past, there's no information out there. And that really galls me. So there's so much more that we have to do to really put together some really good books that help people understand our past.
There's enough to keep all of us busy till we die.
Well, for sure. I really enjoyed both of you all. Thank you so much, Mr. John A. Wright Sr., Mr. John A. Wright Jr. Continue your good work. I got to have you back on the show, because we're going to do some more talking about Black history here in the St. Louis area and Black history in the state of Missouri. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you
so much. All right. And you all have an awesome, awesome, awesome week. And thank you. I'm Robin Boyce for City Corner.